we're going to be going over none other than Blue Hybrid. This deck is crazy, still going in. So let's dive into the video and see what I have going for you. Right, one of the major strengths in this deck is it has one of the strongest consistency engine, as known for its draw, and very little tamer hate in this game really sets this deck above all else, because as long as hybrids don't have that extreme tamer hate, this deck will thrive pretty nicely. Has a fully interchangeable sideboard that can be switched to an aggro bonds hybrid build, which I'm going to explain at the end of the video, the sideboard and stuff like that. Ability to remove sources from an opponent's Digimon, able to stun your opponent's Digimon for a turn, meaning that they can't swing or block because they have no sources. Removing sources from your opponent's Digimon makes it so they're not as powerful through their inheritables. So again, it's just really important to know how this deck interacts. Any deck at the same speed does not cause much issue for this, just because if the deck is playing a little bit slower, it likes that style because it doesn't have an issue with taking the slow game. It'll remove sources and pummel your opponent because they're playing a slower game state. Blue has rookies that counter both memory gain and lowering DG evolution costs, so in the main house colors, so it does help out extremely well that way. Sideboard is super welcoming to this deck because now you can open up 10 extra slots for this list that it didn't have before, so keep that in mind. Then we also need to go over its weaknesses. Weaknesses: slow to get the board set up. Most of the hybrid decks are a little bit slower, so if decks can outpace it or outrun it fast enough, you will see how quickly you'll get overwhelmed. OTK decks that can clear its security in about 4 to 5 in one turn can leave you falling extremely far behind. Just because you do gain a bunch of tamers doesn't mean you're going to have enough memory to benefit from all those tamer clears. Loss of Mega Digimon Fusion. Susano is no longer a surprise early game pusher, so he's resolving to be like late game, but sometimes you might not need that late game as the early game aspiration anyway. But it was such a great investment because Susanomon could benefit from making one of your tamers all of a sudden become Susanomon and push your opponent for game. Then Ice Wall hit makes the deck really struggle against faster paced decks, because Ice Wall used to be able to slam down a couple times a turn. You could memory choke your opponent, and then your opponent's just you're gonna have a chance to survive turns that you weren't really meant to. But now with the restriction to 1, you really have to pay attention to what you're doing with the list. Higher tamer counts can lead to brickier hands. There's about 12 of them in the main deck, and even with mulligans in place, you could still see a high brick hand. That's kind of the double-edged sword of tamers, is that you will have a higher chance of bricking. Very little rigor room for techs in the main deck, just because of how high the hybrids are. So let's go over the hybrid core. The blue hybrid archetype is about 34 to 38 cards out of your main deck. That's a huge consumption to a lot of the other decks that have been kind of like in this about half range, like 25 or anything like that, since most of it is in the Strabimons and the Bokomons as the starter engines of your rookies. It does eat up quickly, though they are great searchers, and draw advantage really is powerful in blue. Just keep that in mind when you're trying to do that. And because of that, you really don't have a lot of flexibility and play the deck how you want. It's kind of like this straightforward style of play. You don't have a lot of wiggle room to change it up, but your sideboard allows you to do that, so keep that in mind. So let's talk about the draw and filter engine, shall we? It's actually pretty good. First off, we do have Upamon being able to, if your opponent has a Digimon with no evolutionary sources, draw a card when attacking. Really powerful skill. We play him at 1. It just helps out because when we swing with it, there's very little times we'll actually promote up and swing into it, but swing, didn't use this from raising because most of it will be Digi-Evolutions through our tamers. Then we have Kyaromon. So when one of your opponent's Digi-Evolution cards is trash, trigger draw 1. I more than likely botched the name, but just keep that in mind. This one's very easy to get off because most of our effects actually remove sources. So that's really cool because as long as we can trash them by our effects, we're going to gain a +1 value out of it. So keep that in mind. And the more that's are out from our raising, that's the better we're going to see it. Strabimon's really good because revealing the top 3 cards, add 1 Digimon card with hybrid in its form or blue tamer card from among them to your hand. Place the remaining cards at the bottom of the deck in any order. Being able to place cards, well, being able to try to nab 2, since we are playing a high tamer count, we're close to the 14, we're like 12, and then we have a high, hybrid count that is huge. Our hybrid package is really massive. So keep that in mind that we're going to have plenty of targets to actually hit with this deck. The new BT7 Strabimon on plays reveals the top 4 cards of your deck. Add 1 card with hybrid in traits, Zanomon or KendoGarurumon among them to your hand. Place the remaining cards at the bottom of the deck in any order. It also has a very nice on deletion effect. You may play 1 Koji from your hand without paying its memory cost. These are really good because being able to play out your tamer for free when it's deleted is super easy to get off. But the plussing in this card is really nasty because, again, you get to add 1 card out of the 3 is really nice because it's a 3 cost. Then we have Bokomon himself. Reveal 5 cards from the top of your deck. Add 1 card with hybrid in its form or 10 warriors in its typing. Cards among them to your hand. Place the remaining cards at the bottom of the deck in any order. At least going for 2 for a 3 cost is really nasty, but it also has the nasty effect when your tamers, Digivolves, gain 2 memory. So making most of our Digimon that Digivolve on top of our tamers free cost, I don't see an issue with that. I say that's a win. Then we do play Davis because he is a memory resetter. He'll set you to 3 every turn, guaranteed, but he also has this fantastic reveal the top 3 cards of your deck. Add 1 blue or green Digimon card among them to your hand. Place the remaining cards at the bottom of the deck in any order. Since we're going to be filtering and with our mulligan, we draw so much, we can cycle through our deck extremely easy. So keep that in mind that Davis is just going to help us. There's so much plus engine in blue, it's not even funny. Let's go over the stun / removal package that this deck actually contains. A lot of it comes from the stunning effects that it does have. So let's go over Korikakumon, a really nasty card in blue. Because when digivolving this card from your hand onto one of your blue tamers, as if the tamer is a level 3 blue Digimon for a memory cost 2. Really good, because now if we have Bokomon out, it'll instantly go to 0. We'll regain that 2 memory cost, and it'll be really good. When digivolving, if you have a card with hybrid in its traits or Tommy in this Digievolution cards, one of your opponents with no Digievolutions can attack or block until their next turn. So you have to wait. They have to wait until their next end phase, and that could mean blockers are shut off, and that allows us to get to lethal, or that's going to lead us to an ability that makes it so our opponent can't swing into us. Stunning our opponent is nasty. Then we have Beowolfmon. So when one of your Digimon with tamers in its name Digievolution cards digivolves into this card from your hand, reduce the cost by 2. So it'll become a 1 cost evolve. But when attacking, you may return 1 Digimon card with hybrid in its traits from this Digievolution card to hand to return one of your opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon back to their hand. Trash all Digievolutions from that stack. So if we can bounce maybe a blocker out of the way, a champion, it really does help out, and it'll keep your opponent off board, especially with MagnaGarurumon in this deck. Crazy. So when digivolving or when attacking, once per turn, return one of your opponent's Digimon with hybrid in traits from this Digievolution card to your hand to return one of your opponent's Digimon with the same level as the return card to its owner's hand. Trash all Digievolution cards of that Digimon. Heads up. A little bit of warning here. When digivolving and when attacking, if you activate it when the when digivolving effect happens, you will not be able to activate the when attacking effect for that turn. If you didn't do it, activate the when digivolving effect that turn, you can do the when attacking, but you cannot do both in one turn. It's a once per turn skill, so just keep that in mind. And then your turn, once per turn, when a card effect adds a card to your hand, you may unsuspend this Digimon. He allows you to multi-attack, and that is really powerful for us, because then even if you didn't want to swing again, you can always just have him stand up, and then you're just ready to go. There's nothing your opponent you have to really commit to this card. Suzanomon is a very nasty when digivolving effect, deletes one of your opponent's Digimon instantly, but he's also a very powerful boss Digimon in himself because he has security +2. So he's instantly swinging for 3 security on his own. So you kind of see where Mega Digifusion had to get hit. But you may digivolve this card from your hand onto one of your tamers as if the tamer was a level 6 Digimon by placing 10 cards with tamers cards and or cards with hybrid in the traits from your hand or trash to the bottom of your deck in any order. Being able to stack your deck and get a second recount of everything is really good. He cycles really well. Now we have Ice Wall. All your opponent's Digimon gain when attacking lose 2 memory until the end of their next turn. So even if they play new Digimon with Rush, they're all just blanketed effects. There's nothing they can do against this, and this could help you survive a turn and give you the rebound that it needs that you had to play. There's reasons why I got limited to 1, because people would just spam this repetitively and for multiple turns, and then you could not get in for game wins unless they gave you a bunch of memory, and that really struggled. Tommy is really nice because on play, trash 3 Digi-Evolution cards from one of your opponent's Digimon, but when attacking once per turn, one of your opponent's Digimon without Digi-Evolutions can attack or block until the end of the turn. So if you combo it with Korikakumon and Tommy, both will trigger, meaning 2 Digimon will not be able to attack or block until their next turn, and that could win you the game so easily because now they're not swinging. It's like having a bunch of ice walls on bodies, and they're just guaranteeing. But there are ways around it, because if they can keep their sources on waiting games, is really tough for this deck to keep up with. So let's talk about the accelerants in this deck. So first off, we have Strabimon being a fantastic accelerant because when attacking, if it is a hybrid or 10 legendary warrior kind of card, 10 warriors, it gains 1 memory when it attacks. So it allows us to gain a memory that can sometimes allow us to get into another hybrid on one of our tamers just to win the game. It does come up. It's very situational though. Bokomon, we mentioned earlier in the video because it is such a powerful draw engine in itself, because it can plus you 2 cards in it very easily, but it also has when your tamer digivolves, give it gain 2 memory. Since most of our hybrids digivolve for 2 on top of a tamer, this basically replenishes the cost, and that could give us a very solid win, because now you can now digivolve up further or quicker because now you didn't waste too much resources. Howling memory boost, being able to trash 2 Digi-Evolution cards at the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon, then one of your opponent's Digimon with no Digi-Evolution sources can attack or block until the end of next turn. This then place this card into the battle area, delay, gain 2 memory, which is really good because that's really helpful to have that extra accelerant to get us into plays that we might not have had. So keep that in mind. Howling memory boost is really good. Davis is in here because of that plussing engine he gives, but he'll always set you to 3 memory. We've already talked about Davis enough. So, and then we have Sora, Joe, Kido. They have starting of your turn. If your opponent has a Digimon with no Digi-Evolution sources in play, gain 2 memory. When you attack with a blue Digimon, you may suspend this tamer, trash 2 Digi-Evolution cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. Really good being able to trash sources off, and that allows it to activate its own effect to gain you extra memory, meaning we have more stuff to play through, which is really good for us. Koji's, we've already talked a little, we haven't really talked much about him. You may place 5 cards with hybrid in its traits from your hand under this Digimon in any order. Digivolve it into one of your MagnaGarurumons in your hand, or its Digi-Evolution cost as if the tamer is a level 5 Digimon. So it allows us to get into our boss Digimon very easily. Might lose hand resources, but if this is blue, we draw a lot of cards anyway. But your turn, once per turn, when an effect adds a card to your hand, gain 1 memory, then this Digimon cannot be blocked for the turn, allowing us to swing in and not worry about having to be blocked out. So let's go over, the support cards in / class that we do have. ModokiBetamon is in here for shutting down your opponent's memory gains, anything with Lulaloop, anything that just straight up gas that would give them a bunch of memory, the memory boosters, stuff like that, just shuts them down, and that might be enough for you to win the game. So keep that in mind, that just sometimes just having an out like that really does help out in the main deck. Then we have Kumamon. So it can digivolve on top of a tamer as if it was level 3. And then when digivolving, trash one card from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon, helping fuel Korikakumon's or even Tommy's skill is really nice, because now you can trash with Kumamon first, then activate Tommy's skill to maybe stun that same Digimon, and now they're kind of screwed. KendoGarurumon's in here, so he can digivolve for 2 costs on top of a tamer, and as if it was a level 3. And then when digivolving, if you have a card with Hybrid or Koji in its Digievolution cards, this Digimon gains jamming. So he just allows you to swing in if you know you're facing bigger decks that are constantly just going to knock your Digimon out of play through battle. You can at least have jamming as a nice backup. I think KendoGarurumon's really good, especially since he can digivolve on top of a level 4 for 1 cost, can help you dig a little deeper if you needed to. Howling Memory Boost, as I mentioned earlier, helps trash the sources underneath, and then you're just going to gain that accelerant cost. Sora Izzy Joe is an accelerant card, but it also helps trash and fuel the effects for the Korikakus, any other major cards that wants to stun. You know, that's just how we're going to use it. Then we have Tommy, especially the on-play trash 3 cards from the bottom of one of your opponent's Digimon. Just all in all, what he's going to be doing the whole time is just stun, 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 and just resource removal. Let's talk about a side deck option. This is just your basic side deck options that really do help you out in the long game. So ModokiBetamon's here just to counter the blue decks, memory boosters, Lilithloop, anything that gains memory at the end of the day. Just really does help out. Sayokomon is in here to counter decks that want to use 50% win rates, green decks, or other hybrid decks, because our ultimate lines do have that play for less cost. Really does help out. MagnaGarurumon for the Rookie Rush style decks, because some people might switch out cards and become a very aggro rookie style deck very easily. 10 cards is very easy to just fill your deck with a lower end and just switch into this rush style deck that your opponent's not ready for. Emergency program shutdown, option heavy matchups, basically anything like security control, Bella Stars, anything like that, just to slow them down a bit if they're going to try to do anything. But since we are hybrids, we don't have much to worry about. It's just really good to, if you couldn't kill them that turn, have at least emergency program shutdown just to shut off their options so your stuff stays on the board at least a little bit more. And it's a great choking card because it's only 3 cost. Avenge Kidmons, just for that purple Bella Star deck help counter, just because it can come in for cheaper and cheaper as the game goes on, and then just recycles everything back to the bottom of their deck. So now they don't have ways of playing Bella Star instantaneously anymore, and that really does help out nicely. Let's talk about the hybrid Gabumon deck. So these 10 cards are really good. You get the Gabumon that's going to restand itself, help you with the Gabumons just to redo that combo for 3 attacks in 1 turn. And then we do have the Gabumon that searches for a tamer or a Gabumon. So at least we have enough targets for this to hit. And then we'll just gain some decent tamer filtering just with him just constantly swinging with our hybrids as long as they survive. And then Matt is in here just to help warp our Gabumons into Gabumon. So just keep that in mind. And then Gabumons, just the aggro we need. It's really good smokescreen style type of play. It really does help out in the long game, and it'll surprise your opponent in ways that your opponent doesn't know what your deck's going to do in game 3. Then the sideboard basically changes up your deck to a more aggressive style. So keep that in mind. What do you guys think of the blue hybrid, this format? Let me know down in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace!